Fantastic. So good evening to one and all. It's a great pleasure and honor that to run a session after a long time we have been contemplating to do for L&D Global, and so I'm feeling really privileged to run this session for all of you and to set the ball rolling without further loss of time. So leveraging paradoxes is the topic, and what is the objective? Help reflect and leverage paradoxes to deliver results. And I'm sure certainly all of us will have a kind of reflective journey today to understand what are these paradoxes and how we can leverage them to deliver better results in our workplace. So some of these important things which I want to share is to get the best out of this session is this PPT is just an outline, and so we can meander around and maybe we can go beyond these topics which we are talking here, and so that we can build. I believe in collective wisdom. So each one of you can contribute also as we go along. So your participation and contributions are more significant than this PPT. Own your energy. Maybe I may not sing and dance, but I request all of you to own your energy and be reflective, because reflections will help us to challenge our assumptions. Reflections will help us to challenge our mental models, and reflections will also help us to challenge and see what is our predisposition. Reflections will help us to understand what is our unconscious bias. So a lot of while judging Thirumal and evaluating Thirumal, so don't miss out on reflecting on yourself. So and also have an open mind to have fun. And there's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to have a lot of fun and a lot of humor in the session. So we don't have to really be very serious about the content. We can learn with fun. And each one is entitled for your own thoughts and ideas. I'm sure certainly all of us come with our own thoughts and ideas. So we are free to agree to disagree here as we progress. And each one will speak up from his own school of thought or frame of reference. So it's okay, to agree to disagree, and keep your volumes full on so that I'm audible to all of you. Many times, if your volume is low on your system, then, I won't be audible to all of you. So I think these are the few takeaways, particularly to get the best out of the session. Anyone want to add on anything? You can unmute and say, am I audible to all of you? Can someone unmute and tell me, am I audible to all of you?
Yes, Thirumal. Yes, it's absolutely audible. Good to go.
Yeah. So I just want to ask, audience here, would anyone want to add on to this list which I mentioned here to get the best out of this session? Anyone want to unmute and say something like, ground rules kind of thing?
I think you covered it all, Thirumal.
Good.
Yeah.
So keywords is one is paradox, the other one is juxtapose. I thought, before I walk into these contents, I thought I should spend some time on understanding what is paradox and juxtapose. So paradox is a statement or proposition which, despite sounds reasoning from acceptable premises, leads to conclusions that seems logically unacceptable and self-contradictory. The funniest part is that while they are seemingly very convincing, but they are also logically unacceptable. And when we go a little deeper, we start seeing sense again. But again, when you really look at the surface, they are very self-contradictory. Very funny proposition in a paradox. They are very self-contradictory. But as an individual, as a manager or as an employee, he is expected to demonstrate both of them. You can't say that my predisposition is only towards one of the paradox, but not the other side of the paradox. For example, if I may give a peek into this, one small peek, which before I may talk all of these paradoxes as we progress, the peek is when you say SOP, companies are expecting to follow the standard operating processes. But the other hand, we say we'll have to be very creative in the job. While being creative, how is that we can follow SOPs? Or while being following SOPs, how can we be creative? So this paradox is self-contradictory. But then as we progress, we'll try and explore how we can bring a balance in that. Juxtapose looked as if like a brother to paradox, and therefore I thought I should also talk about this word. It talks about two things are placed side by side to see the comparison, and which highlights the contrast between the two elements. So while paradox highlights the self-contradiction, juxtapose gives us the kind of a contrast of this paradox. So we'll try and see how we can understand with regard to juxtapose and with regard to paradox, how we can leverage it to understand the paradoxes. So what is the expectation? What is the expectation is leaders and organizations need to navigate these paradoxes, need to navigate or need to manage or need to maneuver, not manipulate, maneuver these paradoxes by recognizing and avoiding predispositions. And I'm sure all of us are, little unconscious bias towards particular thing. If you talk about people and tasks, some people are, people biased. Some people are task biased. So this is being an unconscious bias. This is in any given individual. And yeah, when you even talk about predisposition, you could be predisposition towards people, and therefore he is very people centric. Someone is highly predisposition towards the task, and therefore is task centric. So we get to see this kind of predispositions in us. The purpose of this session is how we can build awareness about our predisposition, and how to overcome that and bring a balance and leverage the best both sides of the paradox. That's the idea. And also another thing which came to my mind was while leveraging these paradoxes, I think we'll have to use our art and science. And I'm sure humans are intrinsically artistic. All of us are very artistic. You take an example of a guy who's coming late to the office. If the manager is going to ask him, why are you late? And you can see all the art in display. He can storytelling. He can paint a big canvas and say how the breakdown was, what was the traffic jam, and his animation and expressions. So inherently very artistic people are very artistic. And also at the same time, people are also very data driven and very scientific driven. So manager would start on the data points, like what time did you start? Did you budget the travel time? How did you get that fixed and all that? So what we'll do is, while exploring these paradoxes, we'll try and see how we can leverage these paradoxes with the art and science. The first one and the most favorite one for me, people and tasks. And am I audible to all of you? Can one of you respond, please?
Yes, you're very much audible.
Yes.
So good. I know when we talk about people and task orientation, this has been very fascinating paradox to me, right? Across, along with my career, this is one thing which stayed with me. Initial days of my promotion, in the year 2000, I got promoted. There was a kind of a buzz like millennial manager. I was reading that magazine, and then I found that, I should become millennial manager. It was in 1999, November, I was reading this magazine. And law of attraction, I was attracting. GK is the master of law of attraction. And those days, even without knowing, seems to be attracting that. And then the company lined up with interviews, and then I began, and then called for interview. I got selected and became a manager. What happened? Performance-based promotions, they were all. And therefore, since there was a consistent performance, and I got promoted. What happened with me, if I have to share my own anecdote with this paradox, I was headquartered in Hubli. I was promoted and went sent to Hubli in Karnataka. I went to Hubli. It was like a paradise, pensioners' paradise was Dharwad. People were very laid back and lazy and comfortable. So once I went there, I analyzed the data points, and I also analyzed the people profiles, and I figured out that they were all at an average performance around 70-75%. And since I was a performer all along, I realized that, I can't handle non-performance. So I called for a meeting and said, hey guys, it's time for all of us, to jack up and perform. Either we perform or perish. This is the kind of approach. So I came across like a taskmaster in initial days of my career. And then what happened? People came under pressure. Maybe in a couple of months, people started leaving, and there was a vacancy. Then, what happens once there is a vacancy, organization or managers will not give you an exception saying that since you have vacancies, you can underperform. Even though there is a vacancy, say that, okay, you'll have to manage with the people to deliver the results. You can't say that you have a vacancy. That's when it has hit me very hard, that I should be people-centric. So I learned the significance of people's orientation also there. And then I realized that the importance of, nurturing people, developing people, retaining people, and then, moving from being task-centric to people-centric. So that's where I learned this game of people and task-centric. And along the course of journey, I had another experience with another manager in somewhere in, based out of North. We were having a national conference, and what happened was there was a manager by name John, and he was highly people-centric, and he was like a popular leader. And he comes to the meeting with all his team, and then they were presenting. Marketing team has made a fantastic presentation about the new strategy. And he said that, marketing manager said that, I think, you guys can go back to the market and create miracles. I'm sure you all can really do customer acquisition and build business with these marketing strategies. Post that, there was a performance review session. General manager looked at these presentations and then looked at the performance of John. Then, he asked John, why is that you are at 70%? Then he asked John, is there a problem with the people? John said, no problem with the people. Is there a problem with the products? No problem with the products. Is there a problem with the customers? No, there is no problem with the customers. Is there a problem with supply chain? No, there is no problem with supply chain. And then when there is no problem, why there is no performance? Either you should have a problem or there should be performance. You can't have a phenomenon where there is no problem and there is no performance. And then he told to John, we are not in hospitality business. Yeah, I appreciate that you are people-centric, but we are not in hospitality business. So we are into commercial business. We are expected to perform. And it was, very eye-opener for John. What the passing remark GM said was, John, if for the next quarter, you better perform and come to the meeting. Otherwise, I suggest you to go and join a rehabilitation center along with your team. That was a very baffling statement. He said, you and your team can go and join a rehabilitation center. You know that, rehabilitation, everything is free. particularly for the people who are suffering from tsunami or earthquake, they give everything free there. So then, John realized the significance of task also. While being people-centric, he realized that he has to focus on the task as well, not just becoming popular. We are not in a popularity game. We are also expected to deliver results. While being good at people, we should be good at even focusing on delivering task also. That's the kind of an observation there. So having spoke about this particular paradigm, I just want to open the discussion to the floor that, what we do is, I want you to on your, audios or videos and share your reflections about this paradox. I shared my point of view on this paradox of people and tasks because I believe in collective wisdom. Either you can give your comments, opinions, observations, or a question. Yeah, it's open to the floor. Can you all please, come unmute and then speak about, I talked about this paradox of people and tasks. Yeah, we'll spend 2 minutes on this. Yeah, would anyone want to come online and speak about it?
I'm waiting for the others to contribute, take tips from them, and then see if what I'm saying is right.
All of you can unmute and on your audio videos also. You can on your videos as well. Come on, let's see each other.
Thirumal.
Yeah.
Thirumal, this is Jagan here.
Yes, Jagan, you get 30 seconds.
I think this is also addressed in some 1 minute manager or something like that. It's very, very fundamentally addressed in the first summary itself. Either looks like the choice is between being respected and being feared versus being liked. Okay, because taskmasters who gets feared, people managers who gets liked, but the idea middle ground is to be respected for your competence as well as I know it's a tightrope walk.
Good, Jagan. I appreciate your point of view. So let's take to other person. Yeah. Thank you, Jagan. Thank you for coming on board and telling.
One of the paradoxes that I see in the current scenario.
Yes, Daisy.
There is a lot of talk that this COVID and this, this blackout is stopping people from doing what they have to do and so on. But actually, the other side is, there is a great opportunity for people that people are missing, which is, to build their self-awareness, get closer with their family members. So on one side, which says that, this is stopping development in people and so on, especially the working class. The other side, actually, to look at is this is the time when people should hone their skills. Actually, this should be looked at in a way as a blessing. Then we hone our skills, we look for opportunities to have conversations with whom we couldn't have. Look for opportunities to, break those, issues we had in certain relationships, probably mend certain relationships. Yeah,
that's a fantastic point. And when you talk about it, what comes to my mind is, post-COVID, there's all probability that, managers will be told that, since we have a backlog, there was a drop in the productivity. It's time for us to go back and galvanize and deliver better results. Now, what is the paradox for the manager here is that, people from the top say that you be task-centric. Under the due pressure, he comes and become a taskmaster. And the HR people will call around and say, hey, come on, guys, now people are really stressed. There are a lot of fear. There are a lot of, uncertainty looming large. So you'll have to be really, people-centric. So take care of people. We can't afford to have attrition at this point in time. So business head is telling that being taskmaster, HR head is saying that you should be people-centric. Now the manager is caught in the quagmire of, whether he should be people-centric or, task-centric. The other challenge for a manager is that the challenge for the manager is that his own predisposition. The predominant style, is he a taskmaster, is he a people master? So that is again, he has to address his own predisposition also. So the idea is to build his own awareness there and then, see what is the right balance he can really have to ensure that, people are there and then performance is also there. Yeah. Thank you, Dazil and Jagan. Yeah. Is there anyone want to ask a question before we move further?
Yeah. This is Joseph Paulson.
Yes, Mr. Joseph.
I have found that whenever you are task focused, you move quickly, you get things done at the cost of only compliance. Whereas if you invest more time with people focus, with a balance on tasks, but you start with the people focus, then people give their discretionary effort.
Yeah, so well said. See, as a conceptually, Mr. Joseph, conceptually it sounds very great, but I'm just trying to put myself in the role of a manager. He has been in the pull and push, and then, for him to exercise his wisdom in here and now, that becomes a huge challenge for a manager there, being in the battlefield, Conceptually, these all sounds very nice for us, actually. You're right, actually, conceptually. But
I'll
then
give you
for a
my own
manager
example. You're partly correct, and I will say I also from the battlefield background. I was in the Air Force, by the way.
Yeah.
So I used to be a typically task person.
Yeah.
Till I
Command and
learned
control.
from it
Command
how
and control
I-
is the approach. Command and control is the
Yeah.
approach.
Till I realized spending 10 minutes of a 1.5 hours meeting to connect with people makes a huge difference. So
Agreed.
I'm not saying you shortchange the task focus. No.
Yeah.
Invest
Agreed.
enough time in the people focus also. That's all.
Yeah. Agreed. The point is agreed. So we will park on this, paradigm and then paradox and then move further. Okay. We'll go to the next.
This is Mahesh. So
Yes,
this
Mahesh,
is
you can go ahead.
Mahesh.
Yes, Mahesh.
What I want to say that there is a thin line, there is a midline between people-centric and task-centric. You need to be self-aware about what is your performance or what you are delivering, and you need to introspect time and again. So that I want to contribute.
Good. Fair enough. Absolutely fine. Great ideas. What is the problem with me is now Indra was saying that you'll have to pace up and deliver your content in the stipulated time. While at the same time, I'm also wanting to engage everyone because I believe in collective wisdom. I want to harvest based on the wisdom of the people. And I'll go to the next one and people can take turns. Those who haven't spoken can take their turn to talk about the next paradigm or next paradox. So there's another interesting paradox which I want to talk, creativity and SOPs. What is more fascinating to me is as a trainers, we go and deliver something, a workshop on creativity. We go and talk to the HR people, business head. They say that people are very monotonous. There is mundane setting into the job. So let's do a workshop on creativity. And we will pull out all the arms and ammunition, right from six thinking hats to the design thinking, in between all the mind tools, and I run a fantastic workshop. In the middle of workshop, there's a lunch break. We'll go to the lunch break. The manager is sitting with with a very pensive mode. I walk up to him and ask him, "Why are you so pensive?" He says, "Sir, I'm just thinking about my employees in the shop floor, whether they are adhering to all the SOPs or not, because we have auditors coming tomorrow." Now, you see the paradox here. While the companies or even regulatory bodies are so regimental about SOPs, standard operating, no deviation, zero deviations, 100% compliance. The problem is, auditors will come and question them. So while on the one end, when we talk about SOPs, the other end, we're talking about creativity. For someone to challenge the SOP, challenge the status quo and say, "Hey, come on, guys, we'll have to really find a new ways of doing things." So it calls for a lot of courage, and someone has to do a lot of research and have quotable evidence to say that this new method or new process will yield a better result. That's going to be a really challenging task because given the kind of challenge at hand for an employer, for a manager, while focusing on the task at hand, if he has to really think about being creative, find new ways of doing, is a daunting task. So this has been a very fascinating paradox for me for a long time. And many times, the managers are got in the quagmire of how can they be creative while following the SOPs. Yeah, so this is the second paradox which I wanted to talk about. And these are my few ideas about what is the kind of a challenge with this kind of a paradox. Yeah, it's open to the floor now. I think who would like to come online and then speak about it? Yeah, you can state your experience or your question or your observation, your comments, whatever you feel comfortable. Yeah, I want all of you to participate. Yes.
Tirmal,
yes,
this is the thing here. So if SOP and creativity are paradoxes, right? So is there a midline that we can draw and hold both? Is that possible?
How? How is my question? As I was talking about, someone should have codable evidence. They should have done an amount of research to substantiate that this new SOP will yield better results. And for a company to realign and then execute a new standard operating procedure, it has to get approvals from the regulatory bodies and then go about doing it. So to ensure that there is 100% compliance. So it is not as easy as what we talk in the training rooms when it comes to reality in the shop floors.
Right, makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm still open. If someone can, yes. Yeah, who want to go?
Pama.
Yeah, Ram, go ahead.
So I think both of these, what we see as in creativity and SOP, is quite situational. That having said that, the paradox here is the current scenario with us trainers. We think that we should be creative and we should start exploring our online webinars, modules, and all of that in terms of learning and development. But then we also have, I'm hoping a few months later, there would also be options where not every training can be delivered in terms of online or web-based or even an e-learning. ILTs are here to stay and it will still be there. So that's where I think that's my observation. I don't know how far I am correct on this one. So
yeah. Fair enough. You made your observation. Absolutely fair enough. So as I said, everyone is entitled for their thoughts and their opinions. Nobody should feel that there is no opportunity is not given. If you still want to say something, you're unstoppable. You can still on your mic and speak, please. Anyone? One more person? Yeah, there's silence. Okay. So the next paradox I'm talking about is planning and execution. Yeah,
Thirumal, I think Brazil has a question here. He says, does organization culture aid in breaking such paradoxes?
Yeah, of course. The organization culture, I mean, if the organization as a culture believes that in risk and in empowering people, they allow people to go about experimenting and they allow people to make mistakes. If that is the culture of an organization, then people won't mind, in experimenting and trying new methods of doing things. But as an organization, they should believe in that and they should actually institutionalize that. Perhaps then, people would be more forthcoming to take risk, and therefore there is a risk appetite which is built in the system. And therefore, then the creativity can thrive in such kind of environment. Yes, agreed. And it's something to do with the culture of an organization.
Like, for example, Google.
It's very critical for startups. Yeah.
You could take Google, the company Google, for example. It's highly innovative and creative.
Yeah, may I know who's the name here? Can you tell your name, please?
This is Indira.
Yeah, Indira. Please, go ahead.
So I'm just saying, it's just an observation that the company Google is highly innovative and creative, and it's part of the organizational culture, basically.
Okay. Good. I think maybe they have made it as a culture and they're able to thrive in this.
Yes.
But keep asking your questions in the chat box. I think Malini and Indra would help me to read out those questions in case if I'm not, because I'm not able to access the chat box here. Sure. And the next paradigm I'm talking is planning and execution. Very interesting paradigm again. And also the paradoxical thing. Some of us are action biased. We are action oriented. We are more into execution. Like Hanuman. Hanuman is also an action oriented man. I love Hanuman. So he goes to Lanka, puts them on fire and comes back. So more like executors are like, they jump start and they get into execution mode, only to realize later, okay, they goof up and come back to the drawing board. You see the other extreme. There are some people who are very much predisposition towards planning. They spend so much time on the planning in the beginning of the month. And when you really sit up and analyze their performance towards the end of the month, you realize that execution was not appropriate. A great plan badly executed will not yield any results. A simple plan well executed can yield fantastic results. So here, if you take my own example, I am action biased. If you take me as an individual, I am action biased. So I am more into execution than planning. I may not like too much of nitty-gritties, too much of details. I'm not too much into detail-oriented person. I'm not too much into data analytic kind of person. So what happens now? You take this example of this session which I'm delivering to all of you. I know they're all seasoned trainers who are going to be in the audience. What I thought is, I shouldn't be, jumpstart and do something. So I went back into planning. I did some amount of planning in terms of understanding what should be the flow of contents, what should be my talking point. And so I did some amount of ideation and gave the structure to that. So then I realized that when you really bring in a balance in planning, then, you go about executing, probably you will be able to really do much better job. I was doing a workshop to, managers on planning and execution, because we found that some managers are excellent in execution. Some managers are very good in planning. And we are all very good at gamification. Now gamification is so much in the offline workshops. I gave a game that you need to build a tall tower. What happened? I found in my observation, a team, when I gave all the resources, they jump started and built a tower. They started building the tower without much of a planning. In the mid course of the tower, it started leaning. It started leaning towards like a Eiffel Tower. It started leaning. Then they went back to the planning. They realized that they should have done much more planning in terms of structural stability. There's the other extreme. The other team was engrossed in planning. To that extent, I had to go and remind them, hey guys, come on, you pace up. You're overshooting the time. So they were so much engrossed in planning, they are not able to take it to the execution level. So they were delayed and slow in their execution. So what I found is, for a manager or for any employee, you should be able to bring in this balance both in the planning and execution. So this is another paradox. The observation I want to bring here is that, see, as an individual, if I'm predisposed towards execution, I should realize I should avoid that predisposition and work on my planning skills. If my predisposition is too much towards planning, I should also learn the speed of, I should also have that sense of urgency to execute also. If I'm so much biased towards planning, not biased towards execution, then it's going to hamper my performance. So this is what is my observation. And I'm opening the floor again for the people to come in and speak and ask your question or make your observation or, air your opinions on thoughts and your reflections, whatever you feel. Yeah, floor is open, please.
I just have a request. Maxwell, can you mute yourself, please, if you don't have a question?
Yeah, so I want someone who are wanting to, out of 20 people, anyone can unmute yourself. Yeah, good to see you, Padma Kumar. Good to see you. Come on, ask question.
Yeah, so I see that very nice point. I see that very nice point that you made about needing a balance between planning and execution, and neither being too focused on over planning nor on jumping into execution. I'm fully with you on that point. I just wanted to ask you, are there people who basically are good planners but not necessarily good at execution? And are there people who are extremely efficient in execution, may not be good planners? And if they try to gather the other skill as well, they may lose their edge. And therefore, would you suggest that people who are good planners take on planning oriented work, and people who are execution oriented excel in the execution space? Is that a good model?
Yeah. Excellent idea. Of course, I mean, this is a very good, thoughtful idea. But let's see, what is the group's wisdom? Padma, is a brilliant observation. What group has to say? Yeah, let's see as a group will process this. Yeah, anyone want to respond to what Padma brought in? Please tell your name and talk about it. Yeah,
Tirmal, this is Mamta. Hi.
Yes, Mamta, go ahead.
Hi. So I just had a quick example to share. I'm hoping it relates to this. The planning versus execution bit in our organization, in light of the COVID pandemic that started in the first week of March, we had, I was told initially that pack up and work from home. All right, and then I was told the very same day that no, it's not required, because there are certain rules and regulations that are to be followed, and we can't just shut shop the same day we hear of a pandemic spreading in the city. And there was a gap of about 17 days after which I was told that yes, we have to start. Within a gap of 2 days, it was decided. Within 2 days, it was decided that we would start working from home. And then there was a chaos, because most of in a particular process in the department I'm associated with, people have to work with laptops. People work with desktops, but if you have to work from home, you would need desktops. You would need laptops.
Yeah. So which was not given to you.
Which was not. Yeah. And in fact, I'm giving my own example. I was asked to actually surrender my laptop because there was a dearth of laptops. And considering that I'm
Mamta, I appreciate your perspective. Now, let's see. You brought in a scenario. So now, in a scenario like the Catch 2020, so what is the way alternate? What is the best alternative? I mean, what are the best alternate choices we have?
My only point here is that there was no proper planning and there was no proper execution as well. So here there was a clash between both, as I see it.
Mamta, here, what is the challenge today is there will be a lot of exigencies and a lot of contingencies like this which may prop up. But as a person, how resourceful are we in quickly able to, look at alternate choices? What are alternate resources? What is the best possible access point I have to pick a laptop, to pick a desktop and get onto the job? So probably I need to explore what are the possibilities there. And we are living all uncertainty in an ambiguous world. So if that is the case, how I can be, more resourceful, how I can think out of the box and find a ways and means to fix this problem. So we'll have to really explore. We need to challenge our thinking there. Because we can always talk about circle of control, and if you focus on circle of no control, even a challenging scenario like that, we will not find any way forward. Yeah, these are my few thoughts. Yeah, anyone else want to come online and speak about? Right. But I appreciate, Mamta, you brought in a brilliant observation. And Padma, in your case, I want to come back on a Padma point. Padma's point. Padma, what I would say is, say supposing someone is good in execution, say for example firefighting job. This job is this guy has to go and execute that, put up the fires. But even in that, though he's in more of an action job, he has to be meticulous in planning. So at which point he want to start, and which level of ladders he need to carry with him. So even an executor need to be good at planning at the same time. Or while a planner also need to keep the kind of challenges an executor could face while he's planning. So for both of them, somewhere inherently there should be a blend of both. We can't exclusively say he can only plan not keeping the executor in mind or the challenges in the market in mind. So planner, while is doing marketing planning, sitting in a ivory tower in an AC chamber, you should also think about what are the possible challenges a sales guy in the battlefield would experience. So while he's planning, you should keep what are the impediments an executor would face. So while we say that you can't be exclusively doing only planning job disconnected with executors, an executor cannot be completely disconnected with the planning strategy. I think this is my observation with regard to that. Yeah, anyone else have any question or want to have a point of view?
I think that sums up, Thirumal. Dazzle summed up here, stating agile working practices are aimed at addressing execution lacunas while planning. I think that sums up your saying.
Fantastic, fantastic. So the next one is multitasking and focus. This is again very interesting paradox which I really found. What is interesting is that today's customers are high on their expectations. They want the service providers or the manufacturing industry to focus so much that the specifications are met. Now, a manager or an employee is expected to focus, and therefore they need to do first time right with 0 errors. And while they are so much at the task and focused at it, they are also expected to do multitasking. So the biggest challenge for a manager is he has to focus on his own deliverables. He should focus on the deliverables of his team. And also he should do the firefighting job in terms of fixing the problems as and when they crop up. Now, while he's doing this, and you see now the kind of dilution which can happen. And then there is a manager who comes and say, hey, what is the value addition you're creating, man? In the system, you're just meeting your expectations in your role. What is ME plus? What is that plus point which you're doing? So now they're expecting manager to be a Superman, like, magician, nothing less than, the David Copperfield. And they expect the manager to be a phantom, kind of a robo, to think of doing, juggling with all multitask and still focus on the task at hand. So this is very paradoxical. While expecting him to deliver as per the specifications and in the agile system, and also he's expected to do multitasking and juggle with multiple tasks. Even today's world, what I feel is, what I see is also JDs are not very unbounded. There's no boundaries for the JD. And we find the job description, whatever is written, at the bottom postscript, they write that, based on the scope, you can be assigned additional responsibilities, which falls in the scope of your competence. A very nice way of putting that you can be expected to do multiple tasks. So there's a nice way of communicating to the manager that, whichever scope, whichever job which falls in the scope of your competences, you will be, assigned such kind of task going forward. So even JD is also very expanded JDs these days we find, job descriptions. So this is the kind of paradox which I find. So the challenge for him is to, while he's focused, he's expected to do multitasking. In India, we are very good in jugaad way of doing things. And some managers, they find out what is the jugaad way of doing this. And multitasking, we in India, we are very good, drunk and drive, talk and drive. We are able to do multitasking, in spite of their unlawful acts. So when we can do that, why can't we do the job kind of an attitude there? Yeah. So now I'll bring back this. I'll open this for the floor. Yeah. Your questions, your observations, your comments, and your reflections on this paradigm and on this paradox. Yeah. It's open to the floor. I'm sorry, I'm sounding a little faster because I'm conscious about the time. So don't think otherwise. Yes, go ahead. Who want to come online and speak about it?
I think this is like very clear, multitasking versus focus. It happens at home also, everywhere it happens. Okay. Not just in organizations, it happens across.
I see Sandeep online.
Hi, Thirumal, this is Srivatsa, if I may come in.
Yes, Srivatsa, good to see you, man, here. Come on, go ahead.
I just wanted to begin by complimenting you. So far, it's been a very engaging session, no preaching, and thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure.
Now, the only reason I came in is to call the attention of everyone on this call. It's a very old program on National Geographic called Brain Games. If you haven't yet watched it, I'd strongly recommend it. What you're calling a paradox of focus versus multitasking, I don't believe there is anything called multitasking. It is a term, and I'm just stating my opinion, and it is backed up by science. It is a term that's come into vogue, and people love to claim they're multitaskers. But what actually happens is divided focus.
Okay.
So when you spoke about additional tasks and multiple tasks to be done, I don't believe that it actually calls for multitasking. It just calls for, like Ramcharan, Noel Drotter in their leadership pipeline have so fantastically shown through their research, it really calls for well-planned thought and structuring of one's work. There are areas in which you need to spend more time, areas in which you need to spend less time, based on the role requirements, based on your competencies, etc. A variety of factors that we won't go into now.
Appreciate Srivastava. I think
program, some professor from some college in the US, I don't remember if it was Harvard or which, they invited a person, a businessman, who claims to be very, very good at multitasking. His family said he's always multitasking. And he was brought in for a simple test. And in the program, they invite you to do the test together. For example, speaking on the phone and driving, which a lot of us do. Every taxi driver has got that earphone in his ear while driving, right? Now, they show how both the driving and the speaking degenerates. Because what we're actually doing when we think we are multitasking is we are dividing focus.
Of course.
Yeah.
And of course, very dangerous. But being at steering is much more dangerous. Yeah.
Exactly.
Focus
and this is not only for things like driving. It's also for a variety of other tasks. For example, you're working on a spreadsheet at the same time, you think of a mail and you're trying to work on both together. So a little bit on the spreadsheet and a little bit on the mail. Your quality of mail and the quality of what your output on the spreadsheet is coming down, right? So once we agree that what is required is better focused, even if it's in short bursts, and stop pretending to multitask, I think we're all in a better space.
Good. I mean, I really appreciate the perspective, Srivastava, and primarily, what you're saying is, prioritization. You're talking about prioritization. And as long as you prioritize and segregate and divide the work and task and then go about doing it, I think, yeah, we should be able to master this. Well, I appreciate your school of thought there. I really appreciate to bring in that kind of perspective for this, divergent thinking. Yeah, good. So thank you, Srivastava, for that value addition. Yeah, so now the next paradox I'm trying to talk about is divergent thinking and convergent thinking. What we talk about, we say diversity brings a lot of, new ideas to the floor. Diversity brings a lot of creativity. And we say that diversity can bring new solutions, new ideas to the shop floor. And what is the fun here? The diversity goes to such extent, the difference, the different ideas like we are now debating and discussing. So for a given paradigm or a given paradox, there are different perspectives. Each one of us have different perspectives here. Now the divergent goes to the point where, to the point of no return. If you typically take a managerial context in achieving a common goal, in a team context, a manager calls for a brainstorming session and to find a solution for the problem. And then each one has his own ways of, building ideas. Now the challenge for the manager is, as the divergent thinking pops up and then a lot of ideas pour in, and then somewhere the manager has to play a role of a catalyst to channelize this divergent thinking into convergent thinking and then emerge on consensus. Now, while he's navigating this conversation towards convergent thinking, the challenge is, a lot of people, they're looking at, will he going to take my idea? Will he going to implement my idea? Will I be appreciated for my idea? There is so much of focus on who gets the credit. One problem. The other one is immediate gratification. Now the challenge for the manager is to encourage the divergent thinking, at the same time to bring them back into convergent thinking and emerge consensus and say, hey guys, come on, this is the best idea. Let's go about implementing because it looks very viable and practical and it's going to get us quick results. Now say supposing he says this. Now post that. The guy goes into the cafeteria. These people go into cafeteria. One of the guy will say, hey, see, man, this man is very biased. He didn't take my idea. He's talking about someone's idea, which is better. Mine is better than that. People are people. People take it personal. The tendency of the people is to take personal. They may not really realize that, he's very objective and is, he's not subjective at all and is focusing on what is right and which is viable. So the problem and challenge for the manager is to hold the space for everyone to express their thought of, their thoughts and their ideas and still bring in convergence and then see how consensus can be emerged and go about executing a particular task. So this has been again a huge paradox and it's quite a challenging task also for a manager to exercise this both, this kind of a paradoxical scenario. Yeah, now I'm opening this for the floor. Yeah, who would like to unmute yourself and share your reflections and your school of thought or your opinion about this? Yeah, anyone can unmute yourself. And also you are welcome to put your comments and your questions in the chat box. So you can use both the forums, either online, You can unmute and say, or you can chat into the box. Yeah, please go ahead. You tell your name and please go ahead. You can tell your comment, your observation, your opinion, or your question, whatever, your reflections or your experience or your anecdote, whatever. Come on, go ahead. You get
good evening.
For you.
Good evening,
Yeah.
Thirumal sir.
Good evening, Manu. Who is the
Good
name? What
evening,
is the name?
Thirumal sir.
Yeah, you can call me
Mr.
Thirumal, please.
Dachapalli.
Yeah, Dachapalli, go ahead. Yes,
Sir,
Dach, go ahead.
it's been a fantastic session. Grateful to you for providing such a beautiful paradoxes, which are very common and we regularly face in our day-to-day life at workplace.
Thank you for the compliments, Dach.
And the tempo that you're carrying is also so superb because of keeping the time frame in your mind. You're going at a pace that is needed to finish it off. And the question is,
yes.
I'd like to put the question. It may have the layers too. I request you to have a little patience to listen to me.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Dach.
Right. So the question number one is paradoxes, juxtapositions, as you have explained in the beginning, or two contradictory points put together or seen together. And you have given an example, a number of examples up to now. 6 we have finished. People and task, creative and SOP, planning and execution, multitasking and focus, convergent thinking and divergent thinking. And 5 we have done. So they are absolutely contradicting or challenging to face and succeed in our workplace. But the point is, do we need to leverage the paradox? Do we need to weaken the paradox? Do we leverage the juxtaposing challenges, or do we need to impotent them not to be a challenge for us? Is it a way that we are supposed to work against the paradoxes, challenging the paradoxes by weakening them, or do we leverage them to make them weaker in front of us so that we can get success in the workplace? This is a fundamental question which I have. I'm asking this question at this junction because the remaining 15 minutes, maybe I may expect you to focus on this area, one point. And the other one is, the second question is, if we are supposed to leverage and succeed at workplace, what strategies can we apply? If it is weaken the paradox and get success, or to be successful at our workplace, what strategies that we can apply or readily available?
Yeah, good. I got your point, Dach. Good. I think, see, when you talk about strategy, see, the point is when you are in, someone is trying to speak. Yeah, let me process through the group and then come back and reply you. Yeah, anyone want to, come in and then speak about what Dach has asked? Anyone want to give a perspective what Dach has brought in before I go about and talk? Yeah, it's open to the floor. I think, as a group, you have the freedom to speak about and express your point of view on this. Anyone would like to give you a perspective for the question which Dachapalli has asked? Yeah, anyone can unmute and speak about it.
Because I'm Malini here.
Yeah, Malini, go ahead.
Because there are certain different expectations from organizations, all right? I personally feel that somewhere you'll have to leverage both, right? But strategies, I'm waiting for your answer. I wouldn't know.
Yeah, good. That's a good observation. So one observation is that we'll have to leverage. We can't suppress them. We can't weaken them because it has to be, leveraged. The whole title of the session itself is leveraging. We are not trying to really suppress or weaken them. That's the message is loud and clear there with regard to, are we weakening or suppressing? No, we are trying to leverage them. So with regard to strategy, now the strategy, who is that?
This is Srivatsav. Sincere apologies for butting in again.
Yeah, no, go ahead. 30 seconds, you get Srivatsav. Yes.
Yes. Okay, I'll keep to that. So my recommendation is look at De Bono's 6 thinking hats because life work is around this.
Excellent. Yeah. Oh, wonderful. So you are telling that this tool is a better tool to arrive at what is the right decision for a given paradox, right? Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, Dach, I think he's talking about the tool also. Now, in a generic way, if you look at it, if you take a kind of a situation or a context, it calls for a new mindset and skill set. More than a strategy, it's something to do with his own mindset and skill set. Now, if I was more into people-centric, that was my mindset, and the skill set is also that being people-centric. So I built my mindset and skill set around people-centric. How I can really, make the people feel good. How I can really be empathetic towards people. So there is some amount of mindset and skill set which I developed over a period of years. Now for me to move from people-centric to task-centric, I need to really build new skill set and new mindset. Yeah, come on. I think I've done enough of people-centric job. Let me also challenge people for results. Let me start challenging mediocrity at workplace. Now let me stop becoming unpopular. So there is a kind of a mind shift here. Being popular to wanting to become unpopular for a short while because I need to deliver results. I need to deliver the task. So it calls for a mind shift here. And the skill set is ability to not being pleasing all the time, ability to challenge the mediocrity. So how assertively I can challenge people without being aggressive? That's the amount of skill set again comes in there. And how can I really challenge people on their mediocrity with the data points? The strategy is talk with the data points, and strategy is being assertive. And strategy is that, yeah, you can be empathizing at the same time. So here it brings in a kind of a balance in the mindset as well as the skill set to hold these paradoxes together and still deliver results. That is the way forward for this. This is what, the initial thought which is flashing on my mind. There could be beyond this, but for a moment, this is what the thought which is popping for me. And this is what is my take, Dutch, as of now. Maybe I'll think further and let's explore what are the possibilities for this kind of question you asked. Yeah, we'll go ahead now. Shall we go ahead? Thank you, Dutch, for bringing that kind of a question there. Yeah, so now we are moving into the next paradox, interesting paradox here. I think all of us are made of one, either feeling or logic. So as human beings, we are programmed, we operate from feeling, some of us operate from logic. Imagine this kind of a paradox between the manager and subordinate. Manager is highly logical and subordinate is highly feeling centric. Now, what happens here with this kind of a paradox? The manager comes and talks to the subordinate. Hey guys, these are the market trends. This is the data which says that, going forward, this is the kind of market opportunity for us to go and explore and, tap into the business, which is not tapped in the last quarter. Now he's talking the data points. The feeling oriented employee will say, hey man, what are you talking? You're talking too much of data. You're not bothered about what kind of experiences we had in the COVID time. We are really scared and there is so much of threat and uncertainty, and even our salaries were cut by 30% last 2 months. And you're talking about data points and deliverables in the next quarter. You are just not bothered about our well-being, and you're not empathetic at all. See the kind of a quagmire here. Now, the funniest thing is, now it says supposing the manager is feeling oriented guy and the subordinate is logic oriented guy. Imagine the kind of paradox here. Now a manager will come and say, hey guys, we had a great time and we stayed locked indoors, and during the lockdown I'm sure suddenly we are all rejuvenated, recreated, and let's galvanize, deliver the results with all enthusiasm, passion. He'll deliver this kind of a talk to his subordinates, feeling centric, kind of a delivery. And there could be someone who is a logical guy in the team. What are you talking? What are the data points? On which basis are you telling that we can galvanize and deliver? There are a lot of people ready to come and report and in the job. What are we talking? Show me the data points which say that we can up and then deliver such kind of results. And all the particularly the instruments or machinery were standstill. There is a maintenance problem with them. They are not up and running. So he talks about data points. The challenge here is for a manager to be cognizant of whom is he talking to. Is he talking to the feeling guy so that he initiates a conversation with the feeling center? Is he talking to a logical guy? He initiates a talk with the logics and data points. So that kind of a presence of mind he should carry while he's dealing with this kind of a paradox. This is what is my observation and comments. I'm opening to the floor now again. Come on. Yeah, who want to? Yeah, Daisel and even Jagu. I'm sorry. I think you are all on mute now. I think people can come in the second round and speak again. Yes. I think there are around 18 people now still. I think, if someone wishes to come online and talk about this paradox.
Thirumal, just 30 seconds. If somebody can really read that well, whether the other person is a logic person or feeling person, then he is actually carrying magic with him.
Fantastic. So you should be cognizant. That's what we are talking about, predisposition towards a kind of paradox. Your predisposition is towards the logic, and you will talk with everyone logic. If your predisposition is feelings, you will talk with everybody's feelings. Then what happens? You are not able to connect and you are not able to influence. So the purpose of this session is to build that awareness in us. So in spite of me being predisposition is towards one, how can I bring a balance? How can I move away from that predisposition? How can I move away from unconscious bias towards one and then bring in a balance? And therefore I can don both the hats and then liberate and connect with the person, then influence the person is what the idea here. Yeah, one more person please. It could be a question or it could be a reflection. Yeah, who want to come online?
Yeah, this is Joseph.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Now, if those are familiar with psychometrics MBTI, logic is about logic versus feeling is all about decision-making strategies. A person who uses logic tends to ignore the feeling part, and the person who uses the feeling perspective tends to ignore the logic part of it. The balance is what is required.
That's what I said, Joseph. You can add on what is beyond that.
Yeah. So building on what you said, there is something called the golden rule and the platinum rule. And we tend to follow the golden rule. Treat others the way I want to be treated, where the platinum rule is treat others the way they want to be treated. So feeling first, connect with them the feelings, and that's the secret of influencing.
I think this is one of the strategies that if you're listening, these are the strategies as we progress. You get to see the strategy side of the handling these paradoxes. Thank you, Joseph, for coming in, and we'll go to the next slide, please. I hope I'm sorry if I'm feeling that I'm rushing through. I'm really worried about timelines, because at some point Indra should not stop me and say, come on, Thirumal, you pace up.
Actually, Thirumal, we are at 10 minutes to 7, so we are actually
I think session is very interesting because participation is going up.
It's definitely
So let's not miss out on the learning opportunity, because group's wisdom is really exciting.
But let's aim at wrapping up by 7 o'clock. Okay?
Yeah, sure. So 2 more to go. Friends, you could see this here, assertive and empathy. Very interesting paradox, what I experienced in my lifetime. I want to share a kind of insight here. What I found is, we in the trainings, now empathy has been overrated. Empathy has been over highlighted, and it became a fashion word also. Everybody is wearing, that fashion word called empathy. You read a book, it talks about empathy. You talk with the manager, it talks about empathy. You talk with the HR guy, it talks about empathy. And then, this is funny. Now, we have certain challenging tasks. While we are being empathetic, we are also expected to deliver results. Now, say we are now trying to run a workshop for the manager, saying that, what is assertiveness? We go and tell them assertiveness is being firm, respecting others' rights, respecting your rights, without offending others. You should not be aggressive, you should not be submissive, and all that. We do a psychometric test and say, hey man, you are aggressive, you should move into assertive. Hey man, you are submissive, you are moving to assertive. Yeah, you are passive aggressive. No, assertive is the best one. And this guy learns this skill and goes to the job. And in the workplace, what he tries to be assertive. And he says that he also be very empathetic. And he says that one of the employees approaches the manager. See, sir, I have a family function. It's very important. I need to attend that function. I'm giving a scenario for this paradox. I need to attend this important family function. And the manager has undergone this training called assertive and empathy, and he knows quite a lot of this stuff. And what he says, hello Ram, it's fantastic that I understand that you love to attend a family function. Even me too. But given the, however, you will not even use the but, because we tell him not to use the but, we'll say however. However, given the kind of challenges we have, given the kind of deadlines we have, we are compelled to stay back and do the job. So please kindly postpone your leave. We can't help it now. So now, with all the modesty, he articulated that with all empathy, with the tone, with the assertive language, without being aggressive, without being rude. He communicates to the subordinate. And what subordinate will go to cafeteria or in the lunch break. He'll catch up with one of his colleagues and say, hey man, you see, this man is very nice in sugarcoating. Huh? This fellow is very empathetic, he sounds very assertive. But at the bottom line, is not allowing me to go for my family function. So he's still displeased. The challenge for a manager is, while he's being empathetic, while being assertive, there is still disagreement. There is still unhappy employee there. Now the challenge for a manager is, how is that he has to handle this kind of an employee who is still unhappy in spite of being empathetic? I understand that you would love to be, attending a family function. However, the deadlines, all that, skill set is displayed, but still he's unhappy. And therefore he may not be, wholeheartedly doing the remaining task which is at hand. So the manager is into kind of a challenging scenario here. How can he really bring in the balance here, being assertive? And one more book which I was reading in the recent past, it was a revelation for me. The funniest part was, what is written there? It says that while you are assertive, it means you are very firm and very candid. You are not budging from there. Now what happens after a while? When you are assertive and very firm and stand on your point, as you go across, after a point, it comes across as aggressive. The other person starts looking at you as aggressive because you are not butting, you are very firm, and you are not, agreeing, and you are not considering. So even being assertive consistently also can come across aggressive. That is the funniest part of this, You don't have to be rude, you don't have to offend. Even consistently being assertive, there is a possibility of seeing as, because you are very rigid. You come across rigid and adamant, just standing on your point in a very agreeable way, in an agreeable language. So I'm opening this to the group now. Let us see. Yeah, who want to unmute and then give your comments or observations, reflections or your questions? Come on, bring it on.
On a lighter note, Thirumal, I would like to assert myself regarding the timing.
I'm scared of you, Indira. I'm scared of you. I'm scared of you. I'm
Although the
pacing up
session
mad,
has
I'm
been
telling you. I'm pacing up like mad.
extremely informative.
But
Yeah.
I'm pacing mad, I'm telling you, in spite of that. Yes. Can someone please unmute quickly? I see Bama, Dazzle, GK, come on, open up, man. And Jagan, Joe, Joseph, Mahesh, Malini, Maxwell, Padma Kumar, Ramana. I'm happy to see you all here, being still alive and being part of the session. Yeah. So can someone unmute yourself? Come on, unmute yourself and speak up your mind.
There's a lot of drilling thought. In fact, the assertive part was really shook me. Now I really have to go do a lot of research on that.
Consistently being assertive, you will be looked as aggressive. See, funniest thing.
Yes, yeah. If you could share the name of the book, Thirumal, if it's okay.
I'll try and see that. I didn't really look at it, but that was real revelation for me. I never read something like that. Even being consistently assertive also looked up as aggressive. That is the funniest line I read. In the recent past. Yeah. Anyone have nobody has any question or any observation, any reflection here on this? Fine. Then if that is the
Hi,
case,
Thirumal. I am Srinivas.
Yes, Srini, come on. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Happy to hear you.
America has been showing empathy. Obviously, they are facing consequences. Whereas Singapore, South Korea, Israel, they are showing, assertiveness. Then they avoid the calamity, especially regarding the pandemic. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they've gone beyond assertive. Srini, they've gone up to aggressive also. They are, the way they're chasing people. You can see that they've gone into aggressive mode. They want beyond assertive to, because command control mode. When things are beyond, when there is a deadline, when things are beyond control, it's very natural for getting aggressive mode, not even assertive. Leave alone empathy. You get to see that, people move into aggressive zone, beyond assertive zone. In a situation like that, when things are so challenging, assertive work doesn't work, because they're able to calibrate quickly the consequences of being assertive. And if it doesn't work, it's important for them to calibrate and move into aggressive mode. Like army, they go into command and control mode. That's what we see there. That's my observation on this.
Thank you. It's a fantastic session.
Thank you, Srini. So we'll have to calibrate the consequences, impact of that. The moment quickly we calibrate, then we can don the hat, which is more relevant and applicable in the context. So we'll go to the last one and interesting one. And then we'll take a few questions. And then thank you so much, Indira and Gaurav, for bearing with me. Yeah, the last one is very interesting one. And we do a training program for all the managers about, on feedback giving skills, And also we talk about managers that, you should be very liberal in appreciation, conservative in, reprimanding, or conservative in critic. And in a feedback, skill session, we talk about, what? We should give positive feedback, constructive feedback, and fact-based feedback, evidence-based feedback. Feedback should help him transform. And finally, we say we should give sandwich feedback. Very funny one, sandwich feedback. And this guy learns and masters all the skill and goes back to the job. And what he becomes very liberal, because we would have said that we should be good at catch the people doing right and appreciate them. Catch the people doing right and pat them. And then he does all that good job. One fine morning, he wakes up and finds one of the employees has not done a good job. There were some errors which are scripted into either into project or into coding or whatever the job they are doing. Then he calls for a meeting one-on-one. Again, critic is one-on-one, because we tell in the trainings, you should do criticizing or reprimanding should be one-on-one. He calls for one-on-one discussion with the guy and tells him in all acceptable language. He tells, you have been doing a fantastic job all these days, and I find, it's very encouraging, and I really appreciate your contributions. Your contributions are very significant, and we value your contributions. All that he says. However, in the recent past, I found, a couple of these things. I found these are the errors which have crept in. I request you to really focus and, get it right and do it in the right way. So do it in the first time right, so that you can expedite and deliver results much faster. And in spite of all this nice talk, this guy goes into again at lunch break or cafeteria. What he tells? You see, this manager has been appreciating all of these days. One silly mistake I made, one mistake. He feels it is silly, because at his level he feels it's silly. At a managerial level, he knows what is the ramifications, consequences of the error. What these guys will tell to friends? For a simple thing, he caught me and now he's trying to talk about that mistake here. He's criticizing me. See, for everyone in this millennium, you find that everything is personal. Even if the manager is very objective, very positive in his feedback, the person takes it personal and he goes into kind of resentment against that manager. And you see now there's a challenge with the manager. In spite of being polished, very diplomatic, and speaks very nice conversational English, but still the employee is very happy about it. This is a very interesting paradox again. I'm going to open it to the floor Let us see. This is the last paradox anyway. Yeah. So yeah, it's open. All of you can unmute here. We have, can you all on your videos also? It's good to on your videos. Let's see all of us together. Let's come on board and be visible. Please unmute your videos also. Hello. Are you all there? I think there are 17
Thirumal,
people.
I think,
Yes, we are there. We are there.
the person who's speaking can unmute their video and audio.
Yeah.
I think that's a better call because it takes a lot of bandwidth otherwise. So
is it?
sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, then in the last we'll open the videos. Okay, that's fine. That's a good idea.
Sure.
So those who want to speak and you can unmute and speak. Yeah, come on. This is the interesting paradox. The last one. Come on, speak up. Yeah, then come on. What's happening?
I think just being good and bad may not be enough when we need to deal with ugly situations.
Okay. Well said.
I'm just reflecting that, yeah, so many. I mean, everything is actually about paradoxes. Are so situations that we are bringing actually, which is good.
Well said, Jagan. Well said. Yeah, couple of more people. Come on, quickly come on board. Yeah, you can even ask a question. You can say your opinion. You can say your reflection, whatever it comes to your mind. Come on, speak up.
Yeah, I'm Joseph.
Yeah, Joseph. 30 seconds. Go ahead.
The sandwich model was relevant in the 60s. If you go by modern research, it says use the Maha Burger model. 4 positives before 1 negative. That is true, particularly with millennials.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Bang on, Joseph. Yeah, next one. Come on, one more person.
So Mahesh.
Yeah, Mahesh. Go ahead, Mahesh.
What you said is correct, that all of us tend to take feedbacks very personally. So that is but another aspect is that whenever we seek for any feedback, positive or critical feedback, are we looking for any kind of validation?
Yeah, see, if the context is not being judgmental, not being evaluative, then again that is a skill which you're dogging. While you're giving feedback, you should not be evaluative. Like for example, 2 statements I'll give you. You don't have product knowledge and process knowledge, and therefore you're not performing. Is one evaluative statement a manager is giving in the feedback. The descriptive feedback could be, I think Mahesh, you need to work on your product knowledge and skill sets which would help you to perform better. So you are focusing on the knowledge and skill part, not on the person here, while you are giving feedback. And therefore you are very objective in your comment, and therefore the person will not feel offended. They don't feel any offense. For this calls for a huge skill set for a manager to being very conscious of not making a personal comment, but making an objective comment on the skill set. That's my take on this. Yeah.
Okay,
is that all?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
welcome. Good question. Yeah. So anyone else? Yeah. So I think I gave an assignment, pre-workshop assignment. Anyone want to share your own paradox which you experienced during recent times or in the past? Quickly, 30 seconds. Anyone would like to come on board and speak about your own paradox? Come on, bring it on. In your lifetime, even in your personal life, in your professional life, even in public life, anywhere. You can bring from any context. The paradox.
So currently, Thirumal, my paradox is it's 7 o'clock, but it's been a highly engaging session and it's been a very useful session. So that's my paradox currently.
I'm good. I'm glad I'm able to impress you. You see, I'm able to hold on you, and otherwise, I would have really succumbed. Yes, and I'm eagerly looking for some more people to come online, man. Come on, open up. Okay, so this is the last slide. I'm promising you, this is the last slide. I just wanted to do some value addition before we wind up. Tenacity, this is a very interesting thing. For holding these paradoxes and delivering results, you need to be resilient to brace these paradoxes. I'll repeat my line. You should be resilient to brace these paradoxes and stay course to deliver results. That calls for tenacity in a manager or an employee. And the second one is comfort with ambiguity. So the problem I was talking about, the paradox of being a critic. What if a critic, you will get demotivated, he may not do the job. And don't have that ambiguity. Go ahead and challenge the mediocrity in the job if you want to deliver results. So do away with that ambiguity and push yourself and do what is right. The third one, risk appetite. And the risk appetite in the context like this, every execution has a risk. Even surgical strike has a risk. And they had a precision planning and they went about and then they executed it flawlessly. So there is a risk in every execution. So go ahead and execute and have that kind of risk appetite in you. And I'm sure you will be able to come out flawlessly. That's the one. And the last one is challenge the status quo. And there are standard SOPs in place. And there are stereotype ways of practices in the job. in every place, in every walk, and go and challenge the status quo. And you know what? In one of the training centers, I went there. I found that the people need to add the sugar to the tea. There were 30 people in the queue adding sugar to the tea, and that was the practice there. That was the practice they were having. I went around to the steward and said, "Why are we doing this? Why don't you serve the tea with the sugar? And only those who are diabetics, you just arrange a flask separately." You know what he did? He went to the operational head and said, "This one trainer is coming and telling me, is questioning me this practice." The training, that institution head comes to me with gushing, with all the cortisol and adrenaline is coming to me. Who is he to question our practices? And then I was watching him, is walking up to me. Quickly, we talk about all these nice things in trainings, and then I was trying to see how can I really cool off this guy. As he approached me, what I was trying to think, how can I send this guy back with some endorphins and oxytocin? He's coming with cortisol and he's coming with adrenaline. I was thinking quickly, how do I neutralize this guy and send him back with endorphins? Happy hormones. And once he comes up to me and said, "Why are you asking such questions, Thirumal?" What I told him, "Mr. Ashok, my intention is not to challenge your practices. Because most of the time the trainees are spending their time in this cafeteria because they need to add. You can imagine every person adding sugar and stirring. How much of minutes is going to take and how much time loss. And each person is spending in the cafeteria longer than in the classroom. And I'm not able to do justice for what I'm paid. And I'm being an external consultant trainer. I want to really add value to your employees. I want to do justice to what I'm paid for. And therefore, I'm brought in this kind of observation. So it's a good intention. I spoke to him about ROI, what is written on investment, what is in it for him. And then he suddenly cooled off. "Oh, Thirumal, I see a point in was saying, let me think it over while wind up on going home. Please come to my cabin." And then when I went across his cabin, he offered a coffee and we had a nice topic. And he started telling all his problems also to me. So I know we'll have to see, and we should have that courage to challenge the status quo, challenge the stereotype practices at workplace, so that you find new ways of doing things. Yeah, I think I really appreciate all of you for your patience, for being good listeners here. I want to thank you for that. I really appreciate for your participation and contributions to the session. I really appreciate your school of thought and your frame of references which you brought in during my delivery. I thoroughly enjoyed facilitating this session. My apologies if I was a little rushing through and trying to be stopping people at some point. And with that, I really appreciate and thank all of you. Can we all on the video for the last shot and unmute all of you, please? Can you all unmute and on the videos, please? Can we all of them? Can we see on one panel, Indira? Can we see all of them on one panel in one frame?
I don't think so, Thirumal. Not in Microsoft Teams.
Oh, is it? But at least let them unmute their videos. Are they able to do?
Yeah,
at least
can
you
see the videos on the scroll at the bottom.
Oh, good. Is it? We're able to see all of them. Okay, Joseph, I'm able to see him, and Jagan, I'm able to see him. Come on, who else? I'm not able to see all of them.
I think a lot of them have not unmuted themselves. So that's
yeah, good to see Srinivas. Yeah. Hi, Srini. Good.
Hi. Fantastic session, Thirumal. Fantastic session. Awesome.
Who's that? Tell me.
Srinivas.
Srini. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, it is awesome session.
Thank you.
Thirumal, I already posted the comment. Thirumal did extremely well to unbox the crux of paradoxes.
Absolutely.
Jagan is back to his, verbal jugglery. Wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah, few more people on the. There are 17 people.
As Thirumal Bama here.
Yeah, Bama, come on.
Lovely marathon, I would say, on a lighter note. But every bit of it has been very, very engaging and completely enriching. This is a completely new way of what we have understood, and I think everybody's contribution has helped make it more richer. So much. And
yes, lovely observations. Yes.
Yeah, amazing. Congratulations. Nothing less is expected out of you anyway. So, yeah.
Come on, Bama, you are very generous to say that.
Yeah,
and I really loved Bama. Everybody was, contributing. They brought their school of thought. They brought their own experiences and reflexes to this, paradoxes. It was even enriching for me too. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to their perspectives too, because I always believe collective wisdom is much better than individual wisdom. So from that school of thought, I was very happy to listen to others' point of view.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Thirumal. Absolutely an engaging session. A lot of scope to go back and revisit those items that you've mentioned. It challenges our status quo as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Malini. Thank you for showing up early also on the screen to help me out with this, digital space.
Anytime.
Thank you. And also, I want to thank Yeah. Who is that? Who is that?
This is Ramana.
Yeah, Ramana, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was excellent, man.
Oh,
Good
thank
job.
you, Ramana. Thank you, man. Thank you, Ramana. So
Thank
nice
you.
of you. Good, good, good.
Thirumal, you might want to look at the chat box also. There are a lot of people thanking you there as well.
Oh, is it? Okay, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that because I was looking at their faces here on the screen.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. But
So
I would like to say, Thirumal, thanks for the very engaging and thought-provoking session. It was very, very well done, I must say.
Thank you. Thank you so
Very
much, Indira. I'm happy to see smile on your face, Indira. Because all you've been in these sessions all along for across these sessions. I was wondering whether what Indira would think about, because I'm pushing the boundaries here beyond 7 p.m. So I was really worried about it.
That's true. I'm going to hear it from Suma, I'm sure.
So good. I really appreciate all of them for coming on board and being contributing to this learning session.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, one and all. Thank you so much.
So tomorrow
Happy
we have a
weekend.
session by Sheila Ram Mohan on how to stop complaining. Would be great to see all of you there tomorrow as well.
Indira,
Thank you.
can you help me? Indira, can
Sure.
you copy those chat box comments and then share with me? You will be able to do that?
I don't think I can do that. There is no option to do that. I can copy it. Yeah, 1 second. Let me.
I mean, you'll have to just select them all, and then you right click and copy them. There's a possibility that because I would.
Are you not able to see them?
I'm able to see, but I'm not able to copy because controls are not with me.
No, the control is not with me either.
I'll try and see if I can do this. Let me see. I'm trying and making an attempt there. Let me see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm able to select them. Let me see. No, it's going off actually. Though I'm trying
it's not happening.
I think only Gaurav will have this command. I think since controls are with Gaurav, he's not given this.
Actually, the chat in Zoom, the chat can actually be saved, but I don't know about Microsoft Teams.
Okay, let me see. I'll go back and check. I think recording has started. Okay, it is there. No, it's recorded, right?
Recording,
Indira?
yeah. It's been recorded. Don't worry about it.
Good. I want to listen to myself, Indra. Going forward.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah.
Because I want to see how I did that.
Sure, you did a
Indra.
fantastic job, Thirumal.
Thank you so much, Indra. Nice of you. Thank you so much for all the support.
Thanks again. Yeah, thanks again for stepping forward and giving us this session, this Gyan.
Thank you.
So shall we say goodbye now?
Yeah. Bye. Good night. Good night.
Bye.
Bye. Good night.